But one thing I hope that we can all agree on is that whatever issue we're discussing, we come to that issue with some presuppositions and with some biases that we've accumulated over the course of our life. So I think it's fair and important as I'm starting this channel, and I'm going to be talking about some pretty controversial things around culture, faith, and politics in the coming months. I think it's fair to just put my biases out there so you know where I'm coming from. And so I thought a good way to do this is to take this test that's called the political compass. It's been around, it says, for 22 years. Now, what this does is it asks a series of questions about politics and how you view your place in the world, that sort of thing. And then it puts you on a grid. I guarantee that if I were to take this test 5 times, I would answer the questions somewhat differently each time. So I'm not locked in on any of this stuff, and it's not any of this is stuff that I wouldn't argue about. It's more just to sort of show where I'm coming from, and you might find it interesting to take the test yourself. So I'm going to talk about it here. I think that for me, the most interesting thing about it is to think of these questions along the lines of things that I've changed on, specifically since the 2016 election. I was the first 50 years of my life, I was just a conservative Republican. That was it. I was a conservative Republican, and so I really have re-examined a lot of my positions since the 2016 election. I still hold some of those positions. I've rejected some of those positions, and I'm in process on a lot of stuff. So none of this is to try to convince anyone of anything. This is to state my biases right up front. So I think it'll help when we talk about other issues. All right, here we go. This will be fun. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Yeah, I'm going to agree with that, actually. I'm going to agree with that. I think, call me Pollyanna-ish, but yeah. And I'll say that when it gets into corporations and regulation and stuff like that, that's one of the big areas where I have changed in recent years. I've just seen that corporations act as fallen human beings because they're made up of fallen human beings. And I think that they need to be restrained, regulated, and not over-regulated. We can argue about what's an appropriate regulation or not, but I have changed on this. I would have been like completely hands-off in years past, and I've really changed on that as I've seen how corporations actually act in the world. All right. I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. I'm going to strongly disagree with that. And I think I want to support my country, but I'm a Christian first, and I'm not going to be salt and light in this world if I just baptize whatever my country does and say that it's right. So that's not the role of the Christian in the world. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Well, no, I don't think it's foolish to be proud of where you're born. Within reason, I think that's, there's nothing wrong with that. And we probably should be proud of the things that are worthy of being proud of, while being critical of the things. But I'm going to say I disagree that it's foolish to be proud of the country that you're born in. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. I'm just going to go right up to strongly disagree on that. If you want to debate me on this, I probably don't have the time. All right, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Now, this is a tough one because I actually think the first thing I want to say is that coalitions are a great thing. If there's some great evil in the world that I'm trying to oppose, I'm going to want coalitions of people that I might disagree with on all sorts of other things, but I can agree with them on this, and we can work together on that. And to that extent, they are my friend, and that other evil that I'm opposing is my enemy. Um, but I don't like the way it's phrased because I I don't want to be choosing my friendship based on a negative, based on that I oppose somebody else, that somebody else is my enemy, and so now you're my friend. I think to truly be a friend, I would need I would need more than that. So I'm just going to disagree that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Although I could go either way. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. I want to say no to this, but I've seen the way, like the UN works. I'm not an expert in international policy, but I've seen enough of how the UN works, for instance, where I think about like their committee, I don't know what it's called, but their committee on the rights of women has countries on it that are horrible on women's rights. And so I I don't know where all of that international law comes from, and I don't know enough about it to say that for sure it would always be wrong to take action that defies international law. I think sometimes I'm leaving open the possibility that it could be justified without going any deeper into that. Okay, there is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Yeah, maybe. I'm a little worried about it when I see, Fox News, for example. I mean, that's just like, yeah, it's infotainment. And some of the other cable channels, I'm sure people could accuse them of that. I don't know how worried I am about it because I think there's also a great benefit to people communicating in a way that is entertainment, entertaining enough that somebody will actually listen to their message. So is it worrying? I'm going to disagree. Next page. Now the economy. We're talking attitudes here, not the FTSE index. Well, that's good because I don't know a lot of that. Okay, people are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I've actually seen this. I was part of the church that I planted in St. Paul was very much a multi-ethnic church, but I would say the most difficult bridges to cross were the class bridges. So I actually think this is probably true, that people are divided more by class than by nationality. I don't know what they're getting at with this. Maybe this puts me in some category that I don't intend to be in, but I'm just going to say, based on my experience, I think that's true. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Selfishly, I would want to say that controlling unemployment is more important because I actually own rental properties, and inflation, if I were just looking at this selfishly, I would say I'm at a stage of my life where inflation benefits me. And but I don't think that's the way we should think about politics and things like that. So I actually think that inflation that's out of control would probably do a lot more damage to poor people who have trouble buying eggs, and it would do a lot more damage to the country than unemployment. So I'm going to say controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I'm going to agree with that. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Yes, I strongly agree. Corporations, they're not humans, but they're made up of humans. And humans, we've seen, will rape and pillage the earth if they're not constrained in some manner. And I think that that's true of the corporations that are made up of humans. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need, is a fundamentally good idea. So here I think they're trying to get at if I'm a communist, and I'm not. This is one of those sayings that I want to say, well, of course, it's a fundamentally good idea. If you could structure a society such that it's just each according to his ability and to each according to his need. Yeah, that sounds like a utopia, right? But I've seen enough of history, and I think I know where they're going with this, that I'm going to come out and disagree with that statement because I don't think it leads to a fruitful society. All right. The freer the market, the freer the people. I also don't agree with this. I would have years ago, but I actually think that completely free markets allow people to amass wealth and power, economic power, that they can wield over people. And anyone who's tried to argue, something on the internet where you end up paying a little bit of money by accident to something and you realize they've completely got me over a barrel. It's like that ought to be regulated in some way. And so I'm going to say the freer the market, not the freer the people. So I'm going to strongly disagree with that. Okay, it's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I don't think that's sad. I think what would be sad would be if the only way you could get water would be to buy a bottled, branded consumer product. That's obviously bad, but I don't think it's a sad reflection that, what this is, the fact that drinking water is a bottled, branded consumer product, it's just a sign of wealth. It's a sign of our society's wealth. And I don't know that that's a sad reflection. You can question our priorities, but I like buying a bottle of water sometimes, and I don't feel sad when I do that. I feel grateful that I can buy this nice, especially sparkling water. I feel grateful that I can buy that. So I'm going to strongly disagree with that. I don't think it's sad. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Well, I already said that I'm a rental, I own rental properties. But on a deeper level than that, I just think I can't even entertain the idea of not being able to buy and sell land. So much of what we do is based on that. You can leave me a comment explaining why I should think that it shouldn't be a commodity, be bought and sold, but I'm just going to strongly disagree. I think land should be a commodity to be bought and sold. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Well, again, here, it's like maybe this is the old Republican in me. I don't get worked up about this. Now, I would get worked up if it were phrased in a way that it says, who simply manipulate money and hurt their society. That I would have a problem with. But this is more seems to be saying, hey, they're not really producing anything. They're just moving money around. And then you've got winners and losers of that game. And I think, you do you. It's not what I want to be doing with my life, but I'm not going to say that that's regrettable. So I'm going to disagree with that. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Again, I'm just going to strongly agree and just say I would have totally disagreed with that in the past. But I'm going to agree. I'm going to agree because there's cases to be made, obviously, that overprotectionism is really bad. And if you're doing it in some sort of just nationalistic way that doesn't have anything to do with like actually helping the society out, then that's different. So, but I will say, yeah, I think protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Okay, on this one, if the question is that the government should mandate that a company should have social responsibilities beyond delivering a profit to its shareholders, I don't know about that. I'm not talking about environmental things and stuff. I just mean like giving to the United Way or, the types of things that corporations do to be good social citizens. I wouldn't mandate those things, but I, as a Christian, obviously strongly disagree. If the question is just should it be the only social responsibility of a company to deliver a profit to its shareholders, well, the should word for me is like, no, they should be good citizens, just like every human being ought to be a good citizen. So I'm going to strongly disagree with that. The rich are too highly taxed. Again, in the years past, I would have said, oh, of course they are. Now I just think, no, they're not. And here's an example. I would actually, something I've changed on, I would actually be in favor of a wealth tax, a tax on, I don't know at what level of wealth, and I don't know at what percentage, but the concept of taxing somebody's assets who has, accumulated assets of a certain amount, that concept I don't have a problem with, and I think it actually would be more fair in many ways than what we experience right now. Because if you think about it, most Americans are very fortunate if they're able to buy a house. Like that's the sort of thing that for most people, they'll save up and they'll work really hard and they might be able to do that. Well, that house is their biggest asset for almost all of us who have a house. It's our biggest asset, and we get taxed through the nose on that asset. So to say that the rich should not be taxed on their assets, but middle class people should be taxed exorbitantly on their one big asset that they work their whole life to accumulate, I don't agree with that. So the rich are too highly taxed? Strongly disagree. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. So now here, I think it's regrettable that we have such a unequal healthcare system in our society. My ideas on healthcare have changed dramatically from the time I was a conservative Republican. But having said that, those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I don't like it, but I don't like the idea of saying you can afford this, but you can't go buy this. I think we need to find a different way of solving our problems than just saying, hey, let's bring everybody down to the level where they can't have what others can't have. I think we need to instead bring up our whole level of healthcare and make it available to everyone. So, all right. So I'm going to say those the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of healthcare. Regrettably, I'm going to agree with that. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Yeah, I strongly agree. Some of the aforementioned reasons. Genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Yes, I strongly agree with that too. Otherwise, the winners, the powerful corporations, can orchestrate things in such a manner that no one else can compete. That's not good for anyone. All right, next page. Okay, here's the ones where you're going to tell me I'm going to hell. So here we go. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. When the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. So my history is as I was a pro-life speaker before I became a pastor. I've been involved in the pro-life movement my whole life. But even I have come to the point where I would have more exceptions than that. And we can debate about it, but I'm going to disagree that it should always be illegal. That's a long discussion, and I'm sure we'll be having it in the coming months. All authority should be questioned. Strongly agree. If there's one thing that I will always strongly agree with, it's questioning authority. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Well, I think Jesus said something about this, so it'd be really easy for me to just, disagree, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Well, I do want to say that that's the law of lex talionis, I think, and that is at the time in the Old Testament, it was meant as a moderating influence. That you don't over punish someone. Now we kind of look at it as this harsh punishment. So if the concept is that punishment should be fair, then I absolutely agree. If the concept is, and this is where I think they're going, is that it should be punitive, then I disagree. And so I'm just going to guess that that's what they want me to be thinking about here, and so I'm going to disagree with that. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. I strongly disagree with that. I actually think there are some things that we as a society can do together. And this is the sort of thing you vote on, right? This seems like a very appropriate thing to disagree on as we organize our society. And some people will say no. I personally think there's great value in propping up theaters and museums that can't survive on a commercial basis. I think I like it. All right. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. If it means you should allow homeschooling, I agree. I'm gonna disagree. No, I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna agree with that because I think that might be where they're going with it. I think there's a societal value in making sure kids are educated, and I get that. But whether it's classroom attendance, not sure what they mean. But I'm gonna agree, since I'm not sure, on the less authoritarian answer. All right. All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. No, I'm not. I think this is one of these where it's like they're basically asking, "Are you an accidental racist?" And I'm sure I am on some ways that I'm unaware of, but on this question, I'm going to say strongly disagree. It's not better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. I even feel bad reading that. Okay, good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Well, if the question is it always wrong to spank your child? I wouldn't go that far. But good parents sometimes have to spank their children. I'm going to strongly disagree with that. And I will say that I have spanked my children, and I regret every time I ever did that. I wish I had never done that. So I'm going to strongly disagree that good parents sometimes have to spank their children. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Yeah, strongly agree. I don't know what world we'd be living in to think that that's not natural. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Yeah, I strongly agree. That's another one I've changed on. But yeah, strongly agree. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. I don't know. I think it's more about being a good citizen. I think that's what it's about. So I'm going to disagree with that. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Wow, I feel bad reading that one too. So yeah, I strongly disagree with that. This is basically the eugenics thing. So maybe there's a doctor who's going to tell me, oh, it's a really bad idea for this and this and this. Okay, that's not what they're talking about. So yeah, I strongly disagree. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. No. And this is where I do get irritated with yeah, now as we get further into the test, you see some of my biases showing up. But I don't think that this is something that I've been taught a lot, but I reject it. The most important thing for children to learn is not to accept discipline. I could think of many things about learning to express love, learning to love God. I mean, I could list very many things that would come before learning to accept discipline. Being a disciplined person, yes, that's great. But no, I strongly disagree with this. There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. Um, I want to agree with this. I mean, I do agree with this. I'm not going to strongly agree because I don't know. Look at, for instance, Russia right now, invading Ukraine. Now, they're not a savage people. They're not uncivilized, but they're doing something very uncivilized. And so I don't want to just strongly agree that there are no savage and civilized people or only different cultures. I want to be able to critique cultures and critique my own culture, but in general, I'm going to agree that that I'm not calling anybody savages based on their culture. People have reasons for the way they orchestrate their culture, and every culture has areas that need to be corrected and things that we could learn from, that all of us could learn from. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. That's a complicated question because it all comes around, the phrase able to work. But I'm just going to say, okay, if somebody is able to work and they refuse the opportunity, yeah, you probably shouldn't expect society's support. So I'm going to agree with it, but I'm going to say that one gets abused a lot, and I hate agreeing with it. When you're troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. So, this is one of those things that you could just very unfairly say that, oh, you just, think about something happy. I've had people say to me things like, you've been saved all day, that sort of thing. So I want to strongly disagree with this, but I'm going to moderate it a little bit. I'm going to just disagree because I get what they're getting at too, where there's some truth to it, that the way that you think can be changed. You can change the way you think in a lot of situations, but people are depressed for a lot of different reasons, and I'm not going to just tell them to, hey, just buck up. So, all right, first-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Well, define fully integrated. I'm just going to say that I disagree with it. I strongly disagree with that. It might be difficult. Again, what is fully integrated? I don't feel like I'm fully integrated into the United States. If it means that there's things I disagree with or ways that I feel out of place in my own culture. So I don't know what fully integrated is, but I can say a lot of immigrants, first generation immigrants that I know, actually know the Constitution better than the average American, and they love it more than the average American because they came here because of it. So first-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Strongly disagree. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Anytime there's an always word, I'm probably going to disagree with it. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. Well, again, I strongly disagree with this one. I think there's a place for public broadcasting, and it's obviously it opens up a whole can of worms, and this isn't a hill I would die on. But if we're voting, I would vote that we fund these sorts of things, and I totally get people who disagree. All right, now the wider society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. They might be. I'm just going to go ahead and agree with that because I actually could see that where that could be happening. I don't want to be naive about this. But do I feel like my civil liberties are being curbed because I have to go through a metal detector at the airport? No. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Well, I'm going to strongly disagree because I actually think those arguments that delay progress are exactly what makes a democratic political system good. It can be infuriating, frustrating, but it's a strength of the system because when it's working well, you arrive at a better solution. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Well, and the same with this other question about our civil liberties. This is slightly different, and I'm just going to say that I actually strongly disagree. I think that we all need to at least be attentive and possibly worried as the electronic age makes official surveillance easier. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I used to think this. I used to think that the death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes, and this is one of the bigger changes that I've gone through. I don't think it should be. I actually disagree with this. I don't strongly disagree because I get where you can make a biblical case, obviously, for the death penalty, but I don't see our country as being any time in my lifetime probably so just that we can be trusted with taking the lives of convicted criminals. It's maybe the anti-authoritarian streak in me, but I don't trust our government enough to do that option justly. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. This is going to be one that I disagree with. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. This is another one that I feel bad even reading that, because I would hate to have somebody take that out of context as though I was saying that. I strongly disagree with that. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. No, I mean, I also don't think rehabilitation should be more important than punishment. I think it's, the one hand washes the other type of a situation. It'd be great if we could do both. Somebody gets in trouble and say they're imprisoned even. You would hope that while they're in prison, they're given many opportunities to better themselves so that when they come out, they don't fall into the same pattern. So I'm going to say I disagree. Punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Well, here we go. Speaking out of the other side of my mouth, I actually agree that it's a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. I mean, there are certain criminals who reach a point where it's like, okay, the recidivism is just going to be there. So I have to keep my mind open to, it might be a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Well, this is a false choice. This is one where I wish that there was a middle option, but I'm just going to disagree because it irritates me. Like on the one hand, the business person and the manufacturer, of course, if we all find ourselves stranded on a desert island together, 30 of us, we're going to be going about building things, making things, putting shelter over our heads. So that's true. And the person who's sitting on the beach painting a picture, for a period of time, we're going to be saying, come on, you got to help us get some shelter. But I don't like this question. I am a writer and I'm a musician and I see great value in it. I don't think they should be opposed to each other. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Okay, so I'm going to disagree with this, but only because of how it's phrased and what I think it means. I think fathers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. If they said mothers and fathers, then I would agree with it. But because mothers are singled out here, I'm going to disagree with it because I think that that's what they're asking. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Yeah, I agree with that. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. I'm torn on this one. I used to get myself in a lot of trouble by mouthing off to cops. I know that that's something that like a white guy from Minnesota can do with impunity, and I recognize my privilege in that. But it was very immature, and I did need to make peace with the fact that sometimes they pull you over and they have the right to give you a ticket because you were going too fast, or you didn't see that the stoplight had turned red. But I don't like this. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. I'll make peace, but it's an uncomfortable peace. I'm going to agree, but it's an uncomfortable peace where I'm constantly critiquing the establishment and trying to change it, but I don't have to. Making peace with it, I guess, as a sign of maturity means I'm not letting it just throw me into a rage every time I run into the establishment. All right, 5 of 6. Religion, here we go. Astrology accurately explains many things. I'm going to strongly disagree with that. I wish I could strongly agree with it here and see what it does to my test, but I'm just going to go ahead and strongly disagree with that. You cannot be moral without being religious. Okay, I'm going to also strongly disagree with that statement, with the understanding that a lot of our morality is shaped by a culture that has been steeped in religion. So it's a little bit hard to say, so somebody who is not religious but is a very moral person, which I know many, many people like that, you could say that they've on some level been shaped by a religious point of view in the culture, but I don't think that's what it's asking. So I'm going to strongly disagree. I think you can be moral without being religious. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Yeah, if we lived in a utopia, but we don't. So, no, it's just charity is not better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Some people are naturally unlucky. I think some people are born with a lot of hurdles. But since this is about religion, I think they're getting at some sort of supernatural or spiritual notion that this person's going to win the lottery and this one's not, and that's because of something intrinsic to them. So I think that's false. I strongly disagree with that. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. I actually strongly disagree with that. Because whose religious values? And I just disagree with that. That's something we'll certainly be talking about more. 6 of 6. Okay, a look at sex. We're ending on sex. Okay. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Well, yeah, don't hate me for this. I mean, I think it is usually immoral. And that doesn't mean I am judging people who engage in this, because that's our culture. But if you're asking me on a public survey here, do I think it's usually immoral? Yeah, I guess I do. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. And this is something where, now this was talking about the laws of the land. This isn't about my personal opinion about this or anything. This is actually an easy question for me. It gets harder when you ask, my personal opinions about some of these things. But as a matter of public policy, I strongly agree that a stable, loving, same-sex couple should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. I think that this is where our culture is at. We recognize same-sex couples as being married and we have no reason as a culture to restrict that, to restrict child adoption given that. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Yeah, I actually agree with that. I don't like it, but down that road of trying to restrict what people view, their what people enjoy looking at, down that road lies catastrophe, I think, and that doesn't work. So, okay, what goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Yeah, I strongly agree with that. This is a question of the state, so I strongly agree that that's it's no business of the state. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Well, I strongly disagree, because I know very many homosexuals, and to a person, they've told me that they feel this way naturally. This is, many of them would say this is how God made me. And some of them struggle with that, and some of them accept that. But none of them say, oh, I chose this. I didn't used to feel this way, and I chose it. So no, I strongly disagree that no one can feel naturally homosexual. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Yeah, that's a loaded question to end with. I get irritated with all the talk about sexuality on television and all of that, but I actually think it's a price that we pay for a healthy openness. I actually think openness about sexuality is a good thing. Has it gone too far? Maybe. I don't know how you define that, but I actually think it's good and healthy for us to be able to talk about these things. So I'm gonna disagree that openness about sex has gone too far. Okay, let's see where I stand. Okay, so it gives us some teaching about the political compass, and it says it used to be we just saw things left and right. Then they give some reasons where it's like there's more to it than that. So there's an economic thing versus there's an economic scale left and right. And there's an authoritarian scale up and down here. So you can read all of this on your own if you like, but they give some examples of countries. So North Korea is like the extreme authoritarian and extreme leftist. China is extreme authoritarian and somewhat leftist according to this scale. Saudi Arabia, extreme authoritarian but right-wing. And Singapore is very right-wing. So, so I see that. So your political compass, where am I at? Okay. So, here we go. I am down in this quadrant, which means I'm slightly left. I'm going to say slightly. You might say way left, but to me that looks like I'm slightly left on the economic scale. That's interesting, because I'm sure I would have been, a few years ago, I would have been over here in the slightly right or even further right on the economic scale. So this is quite a change for me in recent years. And then this does not surprise me, the authoritarian libertarian scale. It's not that, the word libertarian can connote like a certain party in the United States or a certain way of thinking that I do not associate with. But since they're using these terms, I do associate with being very non-authoritarian. And I think the authoritarian thing is one of the big things that I'm coming against on this channel. So I'm not surprised to see that I'm pretty far away from the authoritarian. I don't like this word libertarian just because of what it connotes that I don't agree with. But I definitely like that it's accurately depicting me as being very non-authoritarian. So, all right, there you go. That's where I am on the political compass. And I hope you comment on this show me areas where I'm wrong, or but more importantly, I hope you take it yourself and kind of see where you land. It's been a good exercise. All right, thanks for listening.